better if I wear like headphones?
It could be if you like
Because I noticed
earbuds or
that
something.
I noticed you guys are wearing headphones, and I feel left out. So
You don't have to plug them in or anything if you just want to wear them.
Well,
I
Jason's wearing a cape, so I'm jealous.
I
and
know,
a
right?
and a bear costume.
That's not a
Dang.
costume.
And but yeah,
That
I
was
usually
actually at a craft store one Halloween, and I just had to get a picture of it.
it's pretty awesome. Well, anyway, ciao ciao everybody. How's everybody doing this morning?
Good, very good. Ciao, ciao to you.
Fine.
Yay for
Glad to be
everyone.
Ciao,
back
ciao.
here in time for the show.
Oh my.
And it is early-ish Sunday morning for me, probably later as it goes east. But actually, it is later as it goes east. That's not a probably. Um, and today we are doing the first ever Chow Chow Roundtable. And what that means is I don't know. But I'm thinking it means we're going to chat about stuff that revolves around a certain topic. And today's topic is Giallo. Not the color, but the thingy. So, with us, we have from, let's see, damn it, I knew I was going to do this. This is why live is so fun. Because I could say, damn it. Okay, we're almost there. There was a lot of, we had a little chat thing open earlier, and it got a little out of hand, I think. It
Got
went
real
on.
heated.
It went on for some time. Okay,
I was
so
bored.
from FilmDeviant.com, the Giallo Room, and Gelato Giallo, we have Brian Martinez. Hello.
Hey guys, ciao ciao. I feel so deep that I'm saying ciao ciao for the first time because I'm always listening to that. So thank you for having me. I actually thought the show was on about pegging, so I don't know if I'm going to bring any kind of relevance to the show, but I'll try to wing it.
That's why it's a video show. It's about pegging and tuna cans.
Nice.
And we also have Richard Glenn Smith from Hello, the Doom Show, and Giallo Meltdown.
Hey guys.
Chowie chowie.
Ciao, ciao to you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yay. And then finally, last but not least, we have Jason the Wolfman, the author, horror author, who has something published in The Writhing Dark. Huh?
That's an anthology that came out a while ago. I haven't gotten much else beyond that, but I do have that one, so at least I'm not completely outclassed by you guys.
Yay. I got through the introductions. That was the hardest part for me, I think. So we're going to be going over a few different topics here, and the first one I think we're going to do, which sounds like a lot of fun, is the pseudoscience of Jali. So,
Nice.
Jason.
This was a topic that I suggested, since this is why you tossed it my way. We all know that we got the shows that where, I mean, how many different Jolly have they tried getting pictures out of somebody's eyeballs in? Then there's the psychics, there's the palmistry, there's basically every single thing that has crossed the lab in somebody's attempt at figuring out how to solve crimes more efficiently and not knowing what the hell they were talking about has shown up in a giallo at one time or another. But what's really fascinating is when you realize how many of these things actually were taken seriously either at the time or had been not long before. For example, they were having people suggesting getting photos out of retinas decades before, but it was actually suggested to the police at different points, including during the Ripper case. So, and there's actually a academic paper that somebody put together detailing how and why you would dissect the eyeball to extract that final image. And this was a police surgeon who was doing this at the time. It was in the 1890s. And you've got to wonder what the hell he was on if he was actually getting results out of this, he thought.
He was the killer, for sure. It was him.
Well, you know, it's not entirely impossible if you look at some of the suspect suggestions they've had.
So who do you think, out of a lot of the directors who were doing stuff like that, who do you think was the one who really spearheaded the crap science part of their thing?
Oh, I would have to say it would probably, I mean, Argento obviously came back to it the most, but at the same time, I mean, Martino did it, and I think Lenzi actually did it the least. So this is the one thing he probably actually wouldn't want to be credited with inventing in the genre.
I'm sure he did it a long time ago, before anybody
probably.
else.
But
Like at home by himself, you know, cutting up his girlfriend's eyeballs. What do you think, Richard? Richard, what do you think about this?
The first film I thought of that has too much pseudoscience is a horror giallo hybrid called The Skin Under the Claws from 1975. It's bonkers, and aside from the reels on my copy being out of order, so people that who were killed show up at the end of the movie, which that could be pseudoscience. It's like the whole plot revolves around this scientist trying to bring back the dead, and there's a series of murders, and each victim has undead flesh under their fingernails, and it was just baffling. The whole movie didn't make a lick of sense.
Well, that one sounds amazing.
It's something to put on the show list for the show.
For sure. Brian, what about you?
Honestly, like, I think it's kind of cool, you know, back in that era, because when you look at modern, you know, horror films and whatnot, they don't really go into that kind of stuff so much anymore. So it's not as fun as like trying to trace back, like, if these things really exist or if they're just kind of like, you know, shoveling all kinds of just weird elements into the film, whatever. So I'm like, when I first discovered Jolly, that was one of the delights. It was like, well, you know, like Four Flies on Grey Velvet, for example. Like, I sort of like Googled all that stuff to see if that was like an actuality, you know. And yeah, and it's sad to say that, you know, like the films of today, they don't really go that far to, or, you know, take the trouble to like hash up all these, like, you know, cockamamie ideas or whatever. So yeah, I really, that's one aspect. Like when Jason revealed that was the topic that he was going to be discussing, in my head I was like, oh my god, like I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna seem like an idiot because I don't know what I'm talking about. But the more I thought about it, it was like, you know, yeah, those are some of the elements that I really enjoy from these older films. So
it's not like they knew what they were talking about either.
One of my favorite.
I mean,
Go ahead.
What? Huh?
Go ahead.
What? But yeah, like one that's like I'm sorry, I lost what I was gonna say. So go ahead.
Sorry about that. I was just going to say one of my favorite instances of that is in Bird with a Crystal Plumage, when they're trying to figure out how many men there are in Italy, and they go into this like fucking lab with all this fucking shit, and the scientist guys are such cocks, and it's just so stupid. But I honestly think the internet ruined any kind of shit science that you could do, because at any time anybody could fucking Wikipedia or Google something and know you're full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
my
I mean,
my friend actually calls that the wonder killer, because it's like, there's no wonder in things anymore. You just, oh my God, I can't think of a movie. You just whip out your phone and Google it now. So it's and I was gonna say, actually, I was just reminded of what I forgot before, but even something as simple as like molecules in coffee, like I was joking about earlier, from Strip New, it's like one of those things that's like, what? But at the same time, it's like I Googled that just to see if that was the thing or whatever.
but the fun part with that is that the internet actually gives us a little more access to some of those, because when you mentioned that, my head flashed over to this device somebody invented that's supposed to improve your mileage by putting magnets on your fuel pump to align the molecules in the gasoline. And it's complete bullshit. But it's like, this is complete bullshit. It's idiocy. Anybody with half an ounce of sense would know this, and yet people pay him money for this.
Yep.
Wait a minute, so that doesn't work?
There needs to be a movie that has pseudoscience with those fucking bracelets with the balls on them.
Yeah.
The magnet bracelets or whatever.
Only even less likely to act. I mean, at least there you could pretend that there's something logical to it, but no.
I've never understood that, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bird of the Crystal Plumage, that computer that analyzed the sound from the phone call
Oh yeah.
to track it down to that bird with the crystal plumage, the peacock they had sitting in there, the Siberian crystal bird or whatever. I want that computer. That sounds pretty fantastic.
Well, the other thing about that too, and we've talked about this on the show before, like Cat of Nine Tails, like the whole thing revolves around the science group and all this shit and this weird fucking thing they're trying to put together, and it's total. The whole plot is based on it, and then you forget like everyone who's in it, and then when the guy finally shows up at the end, you're like, who the fuck is that guy? And he's like the main fucking guy who tried to explain it to you in the first place, and it's just Argento like fucking goes above and beyond with that kind of shit.
Oh yeah.
That's actually one of my favorite examples, because when you look at this, that's one they actually did believe at the time.
I bet.
There were a number of biologists and psychologists who they thought they had this, they thought that they were doing these genetic studies on criminals and finding these double Y chromosomes so all over the place, and gee, this must be what leads to their aggressive tendencies and all these things. And then, as so often happens when you're looking at sociological studies, they actually stop and say, wait a second, control group, let's go look at how this happens in regular people, and oh, no, it doesn't actually explain a damn thing, does it?
I think a lot of that too was just like after World War II, everyone was like going, we have to make sure there's never another Hitler again. But like really, it was just a ton of fucking people who mindlessly followed somebody. Like,
Yep.
And if I could just add, like in modern times, like because with Argento's The Card Player, I feel like he tried to like incorporate some of that stuff into it, and now that sort of like things have been revealed, underneath this like black curtain or whatever, like you kind of call bullshit because it's like, well, no, like these elements just can't happen because like you see what he's trying to do, but it's just like because of technology and whatnot and the understanding of technology, it sort of clashes into that, so you can't really do that kind of stuff anymore.
that might be a whole other topic of why do, well, me in particular, but why do people out of all these movies always want to fucking call bullshit on Argento? Like, everyone makes movies that are like ridiculous and don't make any sense, but for some reason, I don't know what it is, dude, Argento has to be held to this higher standard, but then he always fails on it, and you always call bullshit on it. So that's
maybe because Argento's the one still making movies. I mean, that is a factor. I mean, The Card Player, that's, I mean, who else was making Jolly at that point in time?
Not too many people. No, I think CSI is just cock blocking a good giallo screenplay. That's all it is.
Absolutely.
And you look at the pseudoscience in CSI, and that's another issue entirely.
No, that's real shit, dude. My mom watches that.
Uh-huh.
That's legit. So, do you guys remember that scene that had nothing to do with shit, but it was in Lizard and Woman's Skin? Where she walks into this room for no fucking reason, and there's these, like, gutted dogs hanging on shit with, like, tubes coming out of them.
Yes.
Now, do you think that back then, when all this was going on, any kind of weird science-y shit at all was, like, like a shock to people, even in the 70s, and maybe in Italy?
I think it played into it. I think it was like one of those things where it's like you just sort of show things just for that. You know, Fulci is like super. You know, he does that in a lot of his films, just to like make somebody just, you know, oh my god, what did I just watch or whatever. You know, so I definitely think so.
Well, if the trivia is to be believed, they had to show those dogs in court so they wouldn't be fined for actually cutting up real dogs and torturing them. So people definitely went for it.
Well, this is a really fucked up way to say it, but I think all you would really have to do is go to the court and cut up a real dog and show them what a real dog looks like inside, and then they would go, oh, yeah, those probably weren't real dogs hanging up there.
But now we have to arrest you for this.
There's the problem. But actually, when you brought up the dogs, I mean, this was actually the time when, I'm going to let Richard swallow there before I go and bring this one up.
You're such a polite date.
Well, you have to remember that this was the time when they actually recorded and broadcast scientists performing a full head transplant on 2 monkeys.
Oh.
So you can see why I thought you might not want to have a mouthful of liquid there. But
how did that go, by the way?
I just sprayed it everywhere.
Actually, I believe that... I mean, obviously, one of the monkeys was dead, but the other one managed to get some mouth movements and the like, and was able to demonstrate that it was regaining consciousness before they put it down. So, This is the time when scientific progress kind of went, hey, instead of boink.
How much of this...
I'm sorry about that.
That's me.
I actually know that was over here. I've got the one out here muted now. But anyways, that's still the one in the other room I can't get at. But
that's what she said.
Yeah, there was all sorts of weird stuff going on in the... It sort of seems to go in waves. You've got the Victorian era had a lot of weird shit that they tried out. Then you had the... I mean, obviously, the shit that went down in World War II is beyond the pale. And that seemed to kind of put folks on hold for a couple decades until they decided, you know, maybe that Mangala guy had an idea or two that worked. And you gotta... What is wrong with you people? But
see, but to Matt's point, like, do you think that it's one of those things that they researched for these films back then, or they were just like, you know what, I'm just gonna put like dissected dogs in the scene just to make it look cool or whatever, you know, like, is it the science leading into the filmmaking, or is it, you know, just gonzo kind of filmmaking back then?
I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that, because I think that this is a case where it's a bit of both. I mean, it's like we want to put something shocking on the screen. So what can we come up with for an excuse? Well, there's this we could put a medical facility in there. We know all sorts of weird stuff went there. Let's see what sort of screwed up shit they could have been up to and just go with that. Because, I mean, you look at something like going outside of Giallo when you have Ilsa, She-Wolf.
Oh.
that it's horrifying, and yet it's like
Yeah,
when you look at
horrifying.
what they actually did, it's not that
It's not far
outside
from
the bounds.
Yeah, it's crazy because like when you watch like She-Wolf the SS or something, and you're seeing all the ridiculous shit they're doing, you're like going, oh my god, this is so fucking stupid. But like they really did stupid experiments like that just to see what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, okay, why would you ever think of doing this and trying to revive the dead this way and these sort of things? And then you look at some reports, it's like, where you've got the report where Mengele is saying, you actually can't take the lungs out of one kid and hook him up to his twin and have him keep breathing. Go figure.
So you can't take an eyeball out of somebody and put it into your eye socket to see out of it?
Well, you probably couldn't
man.
see out of it, but you could just stick it in there. That would explain why you had to keep going for new ones, because eventually you got to figure that's going to draw flies.
Yeah. Fucking girls doing dumb shit.
We'll see.
Sticking dirty stuff up there.
Well, Fulci went to medical school, so he probably
Right.
picked up a lot of his morbid curiosity, and he operated on dogs all the time, probably.
Did not know that.
Argento, his research was getting really high.
Which is not a
that would
bad
actually
way.
fit.
I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Conjecture.
I think too, Vietnam, this is like a big stretch, but like Vietnam and being able to see shit on TV for the first time, really I think I think there was probably like a little more curiosity about the scientific look at the inside of somebody and what happens when you do dumb shit.
And going outside of conjecture, we know as a point of fact that drove a lot of the special effects people. Look at Tom Savini.
Yeah.
I mean, he always says that it was his time in Vietnam that gave him a lot of the idea of exactly how it is that a body comes apart.
That's true.
I love looking at Tom Savini.
After all that time in Vietnam, I think what we should do is put toothpicks in Betsy Palmer's neck and put a head on it and see what happens when we hit it.
Have a pair of man hands come up and go, oh shit!
But I was thinking more in the way of like when you have Tom Savini blowing people's heads off with
Oh, I
shotguns
know. I was
and
just
they
messing
sort of
with you.
peel apart. But yeah, I know what you mean.
No, I just love that scene because she hits the head with the machete and the head breaks on the other side and flips off, and they show it in slow motion. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
That's the scene where you cut it a little short, not long.
I want my cut version back now. The uncut it's too uncut. I can't take it.
Isn't it? It's so fucking funny like that. So anyway, does anyone else have any final thoughts on pseudoscience?
Well, I do actually want to come to the defense of one movie that's been The Girl in the Yellow Pajamas.
Good.
Everybody talks about the glass coffin scene and how ridiculous that was. But that's another case of that actually was what would happen at a certain point in time before you had reliable mass media and mass and the ability to distribute the photographs en masse. They had people just stored out in the open, and everyone would come through and take a look and see if they recognized anyone. And actually, there's a book called Little Demon in the City of Light that talks about this in Paris around the turn of the century, and the conditions at the Paris morgue, which were, frankly, I mean, it was one part actual attempts at forensic science. It was another part just ghoulish horror show for the people of the city who would come through and look at these dozens of bodies and crime relics that were stored out so that, I mean, oh, hey, I mean, just on the off chance that somebody would be wandering through, oh, hey, I recognize that axe. It was stolen from my neighbors a few weeks ago. Or
now, when they did
oh,
that, did they have them naked?
it would depend on the condition of the body, probably, and if there was anything identifiable about it. But, I mean, that was another one of the reasons why it was a popular thing to go look at, I suppose. Of course, we must remember that in Paris, you're also dealing with this being the time of the century when there was a man who had a performance where it was this particular gentleman and his magnificent singing anus. So, Paris was weird.
Wow.
In Australia, they were a little, I mean, at the very least, they were less insane than that, but then it was also Australia, so they had other things to sublimate their insanity into, like not dying. But, so, they probably did store the body naked so that people could come by and see it, especially if it was found, I mean, not, obviously, since they knew about the pajamas, presumably not found naked, but if there were any identifying marks, like a birthmark, moles, tattoos, scars, they probably would have left those exposed because somebody might be coming through and, hey, I know that this girl had this scar on her leg or on her belly from she had this scar on her abdomen from a cesarean section or something like that.
Yeah.
So you would have, I mean, these things were valid points to identify somebody by, or if there was a tattoo involved, there would be, hey, I gave that tattoo. I know who this person was, or what have you. So, one of those cases where when you look at it, you go, oh, this is so ridiculous, this could never have been true. Oh, wait. It was just about 40 years before it was supposed to be happening in the movie.
Yeah. That's good shit, dude.
Nice.
I'm jamming that song right now in my head. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Amanda Lear. I got her whole discography.
And she's good. She's really good.
Yeah, if you like that shit, dude, she kicks it, man. Look out. The Alphabet song's the best. If you don't know it, YouTube that shit right now. Anyhow, so Brian.
Yes.
You wanted to talk about giallo and modern pop culture. Is that correct?
I had a bunch of other different topics that I wanted to bring into this esteemed discussion.
Any one of them is good.
But I felt like, we're in this sort of, like, for example, Ciao Ciao, I believe is one of the purveyors of the genre, in today's times. I feel like Giallo Meltdown, is like keeping these films in people's, front conscious or whatever. I feel like what I do with the Giallo Room, I feel like it opens up discussion and it opens up, people's minds to a lot of these films. And when you see the influence in, like, for example, Nicholas Winding Refn uses a lot of, like, Giallo-esque elements in his films, The Neon Demon just came out and it, blew a lot of people's minds one way or the other. But I think it's important to just discuss that, in today's modern horror landscape, with all your found footages and all your sequels and remakes and stuff, that, these old Italian films are still sort of worming their way into people's minds. And, so you see, like, all these re-releases from Arrow Video or from Synapse or whatever. And even, like, I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch Francesca, but I feel like Francesca is a film that, it came out last year and it's actually out for distribution this year. And it's a film that, like, you could literally feel like they just unearthed this film from 1973 or whatever. because it's just so authentic at the time, and it's respectful to all that, you know. So like when you compare like Jolly of yesteryear to like Neo Giallo, I mean, that's a movement in and of itself, and it uses a lot of these modern elements like cinematography and techno music and stuff. But at the same time, it like pays homage and almost like masturbatory homage to these older films, in the way that it's like, you know, like for example, like when I made Gelato Giallo, and I don't want to like throw like a plug out there or whatever, but I felt that just I made it because I love the genre, and it was like my little tribute or love letter, what you will, to the genre, and it was, you know, basically. I feel like a lot of these modern filmmakers, like seeing We Are Still Here, I believe, from last year. Um, the filmmaker himself said that that was basically a homage to Fulci films. So I feel like in today's, you know, we have that remake of What Have You Done to Solange on the way. So I feel like things like that hopefully are going to give like a massive resurgence to this old genre that we really love, because like it's sad to say, but like there was a period of time where all these Italian films came out, and then they're not anymore, you know. And I feel like there people should be, like, for example, Creep. I feel like you're doing just an amazing job here with Ciao Ciao, and you keep everybody wanting more. And I think that's the key. It's like you discuss these films, you make it fun, you make it informative, and people want to go back and search out these great films. And you know, to your credit as well, Richard, I feel like Jala Meltdown is just such an amazing, like, passionate account of your experience with these films. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of open up the table for discussion on just like what modern eyes, you know, like, so there's that whole like disrespectful, oh my god, I watch these films because they're ludicrous and they're amazingly entertaining and, you know, they're dumb or whatever. But I feel like there should be more respect to these older films, because there's going to come a time where like people are just not going to care about these things. So like things come in waves in pop culture, and right now I feel like we're sort of riding that little mini wave, like this little like collective here. Um, but maybe 5 years from now, like nobody's going to care about Jallo films, but we're still going to be here, you know, like hopefully discussing these films. So I just wanted to see like what you guys' opinions are of like, you know, how Jallo sort of comes into play in this modern landscape of pop culture.
Right on. What do you think about that, Richard?
Well, I like the remake train is like, you know, pretty much run over every single horror fan in the world. That people talked about a Suspiria remake, which I've heard is
Yeah.
on again, and everyone was pissed off about it. And I'm like, well, you know, that movie was a long time ago, and why not? Worst case scenario, it won't be worth talking about. It might be just boring, but I'd love to see it. And then Refn talking about doing a Solange remake. I mean, it's like he reached into a bag and said, the Giallo bag, like, let's do this. You know, like, I mean, I'm excited to see these films. I'd rather see new Giallo films like The Editor and Francesca and Barbarian Sound Studio. Just even if it's weird or disappointing or awesome, who cares? I'd like more original films, but I'll take the remakes if they're coming.
How do you feel about like Strange Color Your Body's Tears basically using like an entire old school soundtrack? Like, is that something that is okay with you? Do you guys enjoy that, or are you like, fucking come on, like, what are you guys doing here?
Well,
You know, I like it because it's like these two filmmakers love the genre. So if they're not like, you know, being disrespectful or, you know, blatantly like, you know, we're just putting these elements because we think it's funny, whatever. Like these two really love the genre. Like whenever you see them talk about it. So when it's done in that way, I feel it's respectful and it's a nice homage. You know, like Strange Color of Your Body's Tears is actually sort of a mind fuck of a experience, and if you love these films from the classic era of Jolly, then you're going to love this in some way because it calls out to you in whatever way, whether it's like leather gloves galore, like in one scene or whatever, or just the lighting in another scene or the music or whatever. It just speaks to you, and I feel like us here and the people that love these films understand that language. So it's just a matter of just plugging into that film. That doesn't offend me at all.
What do you think, Jason?
Well, I do think what Brian was saying about it being respectful is the key there, and I mean, when you look at what has been going on with the remake trail lately, I mean, you've got remakes of practically everything that they ever were able to squeeze money out of. I mean, they're hoping to get a little bit more blood out of that stone, but you see some remakes that go back, look at the movie, and just say, what a piece of shit this was. Let's all point and laugh. I would personally chalk on to this category remakes like the Piranha remakes, but that's me.
What, just getting more tongue-in-cheek about it?
Well, not necessarily more tongue-in-cheek, but you look at they're more tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, they don't look at what made the original enjoyable in the process. Prom Night would be another example like this, where it's not that they went more tongue-in-cheek, it's just they didn't
more crap.
They didn't bother with. I mean, it's almost like they said, okay, we need to remake this movie. It's almost, you get the feeling that they sort of watched it and said, okay, let's just take the title and make a new movie. And,
yeah, I don't even know if they watched it.
Yeah. You hope that they did, but you got to wonder at times. And you've got those remakes where... What? In a bit. You've got those remakes where they don't have any respect for the original, but then you do have the remakes and the additions to the genre where you can tell that even if they aren't necessarily making a film that will be a huge standout, they are trying their best to be faithful to what made them good in the first place. And going to be an unpopular opinion here, but up until the last 10, 15 minutes or so, I thought that was where, as an example, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake was actually pretty good up until the ending. When they decided to go into the, okay, now let's just throw every single reference we can to the old movies into this. But I think that that's what we will see when we get the remake of What Have They Done to Solange, because you're looking at somebody who has already demonstrated he respects the genre doing that remake. Francesca and Strange Colors of Your Body's Tears, again, movies by people who clearly respect what came before, and when they go with that... When you go with that old school soundtrack, they're not doing it because it's cheap or it's mockable. They're doing it because they were damn good soundtracks, and why remake the wheel? I mean, if you've got... Look at the people who made these soundtracks and tell me... It's like, okay, Ennio Morricone, Silviero Cipriani, Ritz Ortolani. It's like, who's making soundtracks as good as they were now? Well, the main one that would come to mind is Ennio Morricone, and that's just because the man's been working since the dawn of film, I think. And I think he probably will be working until they find... they'll probably end up pulling a couple of soundtracks out of his coffin before they bury the guy. But,
well, as long as Tarantino's still making movies, everyone will know who he is. So.
Yep. And
that's
hey,
what I was thinking of that too.
Yeah.
Him
nothing
using
wrong with that.
the psychic or Seven Notes in Black in Kill Bill. So
Yeah. I was gonna say too, as far as like the influence of pop culture, there's probably two other instances that we might want to talk about, and one would be Argento being inspired by Blood and Black Lace, and the slasher movie being inspired by Bay of Blood.
Oh, of course.
So both of these are Bava's little children or whatever. But I don't know, like if today you were to see something like Friday the 13th Part 2, for instance, where you're just watching it and you're going, Jesus fucking Christ, I saw this and that, I saw this and that, what the fuck is happening? Like, would you have the same reaction as you would now after you, or when you saw Friday the 13th Part 2 and Bay of Blood and kind of put it together like, oh shit. Like, how would that work with you today, let's say?
Well, in my case, I know that a lot of people don't like it when they see stuff that's taken from the other movies. One that gets cited frequently is the fact that apparently B-42 is flying over
That's me.
creep there, but hopefully they won't drop the bombs while we're still recording. You've got the shot from Pulp Fiction where he's putting the needle through her chest. Everybody usually cites when that shows up in a movie. There's all of these iconic shots that they talk about being stolen, but personally, that doesn't bother me because you go back and you look at it, and frankly, I suspect that if you got Tarantino down and you actually got him to talk about it, and maybe just a little drunk so he was willing to tell the truth, he'd probably tell you exactly what movie he stole that shot from.
Yeah.
It's just that nobody's seen that movie, which is where it comes to the fact that I think a lot of people's complaints about this happens because of VHS and DVDs. Nowadays, if somebody made Friday the 13th Part 2, you'd be watching that, and there was a very real possibility that you would have seen Bay of Blood within recent history and be able to see, oh, that shot, that shot, that shot, and that shot were stolen straight from it. By contrast, back then, it was this movie that got this was before Jaws and the like. Jaws was out in some 400 some odd theaters, and people were complaining it was being shoved down the public's throat. These days, if you're only released in 400 theaters, you don't have a chance. You're a small release, and people are saying that it was leaked into theaters because nobody wanted to make sure it was watched. I mean, how many theaters did Bay of Blood get into before Friday the 13th Part 2 came out? Probably not that many, I'm thinking. And so there's a large part of the populace, especially in America, that just didn't see it and weren't going to see it anytime in the future.
I think the filmmakers being honest is a big part of it too, because Friday the 13th Part 2, they're still denying it to this day.
They're still denying they've even seen it, and that's
ridiculous. Yeah.
A film that Brian mentioned earlier, the We Are Still Here. That filmmaker is extremely open about that he's referencing House by the Cemetery, even naming characters by people in the movie, or the same character names, transposed from the old film onto the new one. So I think I appreciate that kind of reference, even if it feels very familiar. That's
when they admitted
that. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that I agree entirely. When they admit it, I might have brought up Friday the 13th Part 2 as our example where they would have had the excuse of it not being widespread, but the fact that they still are saying they've never even seen the movie is complete bullshit. But then again, so is the idea that Warrington Gillette actually played Jason in more than by shots, but that's another set of issues. You listen to a review with this guy, to an interview with this guy, and he will take credit for all sorts of things that everybody knows he had nothing to do with. But I think that is a key. There's a difference between making a reference to another movie that somebody can go out, watch that movie, and then come back and to have an appreciation for the type of movies you like, and then stealing scenes from another movie and saying, no, I came up with this. Sure, everybody's seen it done 16 times before, but it was my idea to do it in this one. I've never even seen those other big movies.
Now, do we even mention like Tarantino and Eli Roth in this? Like
Tarantino, but they're honest about it.
They're honest about it after the fact, I feel like.
True.
Like, it's not like, oh my gosh, check this movie out. It's like based on all this other shit. It's like, oh, well, yeah, of course, I'm a fan of fucking doobada-doo-doo-doo.
The thing is, at least in Tarantino's case, I actually believe that he may not have thought about that at the time.
Yeah.
I will believe that he has seen those movies so often, like City of Fire. I will believe that he watched that movie often enough that he could recreate those shots and not realize until afterwards, oh, yeah. So that's where I got that from. Okay, cool. Plus, there's also probably the fact that I'm not entirely sure he wasn't high when he was doing the filming, so there's that issue too. But as for Eli Roth, I don't know as much about him to say on it, so I'll just go by, I think that he's another guy who has a lot of these influences and quite possibly doesn't recognize them until later. But I also think that he's much more of an active douchebag about a lot of his stuff.
Oh, good stuff. So, like, here, okay, I guess this doesn't really work, but I'm just trying to think. I'm like, okay, so Blood and Black Lace, the killer looks like this. And then Argento's like, oh, I'm going to do my killer like this. And it's just like, I know that there were other murderers that looked like the Mario Bava killer, like especially in like your Krimis and stuff like that. But like, is it the same as like someone going, hey, I'm going to make a movie about a deranged killer in a hockey mask, but it's going to be a girl, so don't sweat it. We're going to shoot it over here. It'll be fine. Like, is that the same kind of thing, or is it more nice homage kind of thing? And I'm referring to Blood and Black Lace and Bird with a Crystal Plumage, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think just like in my experience, you know, just with the filmmaking stuff, I think there's a lot to be said in like grabbing a lot of elements from things that you love and things that were memorable, you know, in your experience watching films, and then just kind of obviously having it bleed out as an influence onto your own work. Now, you know, to your guys' point, like when the filmmaker is like, no, I thought of it myself or whatever, you know, that's one thing. But when you're on set and you have all these things that you've written and you're sort of just going forward with it, I think it's just sort of like, you know, because everybody's been copying from Shakespeare from the dawn of time or whatever, just doing it from a different perspective or using different elements or whatever. So I think it's sort of like, especially in the golden age, I think it's more of, oh my God, so he's doing this, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do this. Or I'm going to do that from this angle with this lighting or whatever. Or I'm going to have the killer wear leather instead of, you know. So I feel like it's all like an ancestral kind of creative process where everybody is sort of trying to one-up each other.
I mean, can you imagine though, like if after Friday the 13th Part 3 came out, let's say, then for like 5 years, almost every single horror movie that came out had a dude with a hockey mask in it. Like that would be the most insane shit in the fucking world. Like it just.
The other thing there though is there wasn't a lengthy tradition of huge hulking guy in a hockey mask with a machete that was being drawn on before then, because I mean, you bring up Blood and Black Lace, and you mentioned the Creamies, but let's see. I can't find the exact description here, but here's a description of a killer, and you tell me where this one comes from. Huge hulking man in a full-length cape, black cape with a broad-brimmed black hat, carrying an axe in one hand and with a white mask over his face. Now, tell me where that description is being taken from.
This is a fun game.
I have no idea.
Okay, that description is from the 1880s in Austin, Texas. No, not either Austin or Houston, one of the two. It was the description given of the serial killer who would be known varyingly as the Midnight Assassin or the Servant Girl Annihilator, who was a proto-ripper in Texas in the 1880s, who is the earliest known example that I'm aware of what has become the archetypal mystery serial killer. So when you say that Argento's ripping off Bava, Bava's ripping off the Creamies are ripping off Jack the Ripper, who was basically this guy transplanted into England.
What was the second name of the killer from Texas?
The Servant Girl Annihilator.
Oh my God!
Because his first...
Why has that not happened yet?
His first... Well, the book on this guy is actually called The Midnight Assassin, and you read that one and it gets into a lot of this stuff. But basically his first several victims were servant girls working in Texas houses. So he didn't get that much press because his victims were poor, black, and not real. I mean, the press that came was from when people would find out that, oh my God, there's all this blood on this huge, expensive home. Then they would find out later that, well, yes, the girl's boyfriend did come up to the house to say that something had happened. I told him to stop making it such a racket, let everybody sleep, and just go wrap a bandage on his head and get moving.
Coincidentally, my nickname in high school was the Servant Girl Annihilator.
Dude, imagine, like, you're that killer, okay? Just for a minute. Imagine you're a murderer. And you look in the newspaper one day, and you're like, the Servant Girl Annihilator strikes again. You're like, holy shit, I'm pretty fucking badass. That's a fucking name and a half.
You gotta think so, yeah, but... And this guy's one of the least known serial killers because he predates Jack the Ripper, quite frankly. So there you go. But
that's a good name, man.
Yeah, but the point is that you've got this description which could be taken by any of dozens of film examples before then. So
that's a good point, man.
I don't think that Argento's so much... I mean, sure, Argento was saying, oh, Bava made this movie that was a hit. I can do this and make it a bigger hit.
Well, it was just the whole thing, like, with the look and the body count and the whole thing. Yeah. But, I totally understand what you're saying there.
It was a long tradition before that happened. So instead of Jason comes along with... I mean, if you just had somebody, big hulking dude in a hockey mask with a machete, and then somebody else comes along, it's a big hulking woman in a hockey mask with a machete. Jasmine lives, or something like that. People would look at that and say, dude, you're not fooling anybody.
Yeah, Saturday the 14th didn't go over that well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Richard, you also had a topic to talk about today, and I don't have it in front of me.
I have it. Here it is. Can you read that?
Nuh-uh.
I wanted to talk about something called the Giallo subgenres, because that's my clever name I made for it. Some of these are real spoilery, so I don't know, like, I don't want to get too into the films, because then we'll go through a whole list of films we just ruined for everybody listening.
Yeah.
But I thought, and some of these can work. Like one film can be part of multiple of these subgenres. Like the first one I have here is the old inheritance scheme. Like how many gialli just depend completely on someone coming into money? You know, the old Agatha Christie formula. Then I got priestly malfeasance, which was really confusing when I got into gialli because the first few I watched, like I watched 3 in a row where the priest did it, and I was like, all of these movies, the priest did it. It's very strange. Another subgenre I have is psychosexual sadism, which the killer is what is it? The killer is a sex maniac. Comes
sex
up
maniac.
a lot. We have the fashion house massacre subgenre, where fashion models they're just too
That's my
beautiful to
favorite.
live.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, too beautiful to too beautiful to die. That's a good one. We have the scorned lover. This can be either a lesbian or a dude, but usually it's an angry lesbian. And we have a ghost did it, or the supernatural gialli, which I really want to talk about. Love the any kind of supernatural influence in a giallo, or even a fake one where they're using a ghost, like the Scooby-Doo method. We've got one that my co-host on the podcast, Brad, told me about that I never thought of, and this is super spoilery, which is the hero is the killer, where you've been following this person the whole movie, and they're like, oh, BTW, I'm the killer. We got a sub-genre of this is like a sub-genre here, of the old inheritance scheme. It's Don't Gaslight Me, Brah. Where someone's trying to drive the main character insane. And last but not least, I have one here, Schoolgirls in Peril.
Wow.
Which is your Naked You Die and your What Have You Done to Solange, all that good stuff. So yeah, I was just kind of like, just created all these little subgenres that I mean, I'm real liberal with what is and isn't a giallo, so I kind of held back a little bit on like the whole subgenre was, how is this a giallo subgenre?
There's also the George Hilton did it.
Or the George Hilton didn't do it.
I know, it's like a double. But going back to your priestly malfeasances for malfeasance's sake, I noticed that Lindsay, this could be spoilerish, but Lindsay, especially later on, put priests in a lot of his shit, and they were always like the red herring. Like you always would go, oh, damn it, I bet that motherfucker did it, and then it turns out he didn't do it. So that's like an anti-priestly thing. But yeah, that's good stuff, man. What's your favorite one of those? You like the supernatural?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of. I think it's the book La Dolce Morte, where the guy he coins the phrase the Giallo Fantastico, and he talks about the supernatural gialli. Like I consider Death Smiled at Murder, and I think about The Killer Has Reserved 9 Seats, and I don't want to spoil. I don't want to talk about Murder Mansion too much, but that's a big one too. That's oh man, those are some of my favorites.
What about you, Brian?
I would actually have to say the Schoolgirl in Peril is probably my personal favorite. For
That says
obvious
nothing
reasons.
about you as a person.
No, but in all seriousness, I really, really dig like the supernatural stuff as well. Phenomena was like my first like Italian film that I've ever seen. When I was a kid, it was Creepers at the time, and just a girl that can control insects. Like I was like blown away by that. And then of course that opened the door to many other things. And like all the colors of the dark, that's a big one for me. And that tends to do with like a lot of satanic imagery and delves into that kind of thing. So yeah, I really love that stuff, and I love that there's so many like different subgenres and subgenres to these films. So that's a great point to bring into the discussion as well. Like
As
we
soon
could
as
literally.
as soon as he started naming them off, I'm like going, oh, like all these
Yeah.
movies are going off in my head. I'm like, ooh, that means this one, and that means this one.
Yeah, and to that point, I was like, when he was listing them off, I was like, oh my god, we're gonna add like another 2 hours to the show.
Well, it's funny because like I noticed that like all the movies I'm really remembering doing it because like when we were doing Ciao Ciao, the last few months we've been doing 2 movies at a time, and it was getting really chaotic for both me and Chris to remember what the fuck movie this thing happened in and all this other shit. But a lot of those were those ones where it was like someone was trying to drive somebody crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like it was driving me crazy. I'm like, come on, like give me something here that is going to be a little bit different. And it just seemed like at the end every fucking plot ended up the same, and I was like, fucking shit. But it was just like a string of those movies, and it's like you have no idea what movies you pick are going to work out. But there are so many like cookie cutter fucking plots in this genre that like you'll watch a bunch of different movies thinking you're going to get a bunch of stuff, and then you get something completely the same unless you're watching Sister Ursula, and then everything's okay.
Yeah. and just to add to that discussion, creep, like something like Death Walks at Midnight, where they kind of give you like sort of like that thing where she sees that vision. So it's sort of supernatural until it sort of unveils a little bit more, and it's sort of a drug that allows her to do that. So it kind of dips it into pseudoscience now, So it's like that it's a supernatural pseudoscience slash what the hell's going on kind of thing, And there's a lot of that stuff in these films. So
What do you think, Jason?
Favorite subgenre is one that, let's face it, it varies from one day to the next. But I think in general I would have to say that my favorite goes into the more psychological ones. Whether that's the gaslighting type, though I'm less fond of those than I am of the ones where they start to really get into some of the warped psyches for the villains, because sometimes it's real interesting to see how completely out of whack they were with looking at pseudoscience, just looking at how completely out there cuckoo they have some of these killers as. The example that comes to mind would probably be Little Quack from the New York Ripper.
Oh, yeah.
I love that movie on so many levels, but the voice really is what makes it. But
What would Sister Ursula be? Like, is that because there's not a wooden dildo?
Yeah, it's the killer dildo subgenre.
I think that this goes down there as borderline porn.
I mean, that's like just. Was there like an insanity one or whatever, or like a split personality? I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
The split personality killer's gotta be a subgenre, because they do that sort of thing so often.
I'm totally adding that to the list. Boom.
But,
I'm writing
What,
it.
are you writing
by the
down
way-
wooden dildo, or are you writing down split personality?
Yes.
I do want to say, Richard, if you ever start up a movie store, I want to see your genre breakdowns for films when you're putting
man.
them on the show.
Oh.
The store would never fucking open. I'd be too busy tinkering with all the stuff. Oh, look what I'm doing, guys.
Yeah, but it'd be a...
Okay, how often do you guys rearrange all your shit because of the like? Ooh, I have an idea. I'm gonna rearrange them like this. Jesus Christ, man! I've done that. Like, I'll sometimes do it by, like, I'm trying to, like, learn more, and I'm like, oh, I'll arrange everything by producer alphabetically, and then I can't find fucking anything ever, and then I'm like, okay, let me try it by composer, and
I arrange it by who ripped off Lenzi, based on the words of Lenzi.
Sadly, my arrangement system for my DVDs is Fallout Shelter, post-bombing, so
Nice.
Well-
it's what I can find when I can find it.
like, my daughter is now 13, and she sometimes comes in and grabs movies without me knowing about it. So now my big thing is I open boxes and there's no DVD in it. So now I have, like, a stack of DVD cases that are empty and the DVDs that aren't empty. That's my new one right now.
I'd be more worried. There, Creep, you might want to consider an organizational system where certain movies are on higher shelves.
That's what I used to do. I had, like, Deep Throat and The Devil Miss Jones up on the top, and I don't know. I think she got on a chair because she's not very tall. She's a fucking tiny little, like, sleepless looking person.
Precocious.
But anyhow,
She thought it was a documentary about the Watergate.
Holy shit.
seriously, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna be the one. She doesn't get that high on the shelves, but this has nothing to do with this show at all. But I'm like one of the only people in the world that I've ever met that thinks Deep Throat is a fucking brilliant film. Like, porn aside, like, the idea of someone, oh, you have a clitoris in your throat, let's try to fix this problem for you. Brilliant. That's some pseudoscience shit that we haven't talked about yet. But yeah, that's a bomb track of a film, man. I'll tell you what.
The background of that film is more fascinating than the movie itself when you get into that and how the producers ended up killing each other, but or trying to, at least.
As one would when dealing with that.
Well, you know, the mob.
Yeah. Well, back to the topic. Fashion house murders, for me, are, like, my favorite because that's kind of how I fell into this. And, like in my top 10, I have Strip Nude for Your Killer, Blood and Black Lace, and even Case of the Bloody Iris. I'll go so far as that, just because Edwidge is amazing in it, and the photographer in that fucking furry vest with his fucking ridiculous voice.
Oh,
like, I don't know what it is about that thing. It's just super fucking campy. But, like, when I first got into this genre and I realized not every movie was like that, I was kind of upset.
I can see that.
Yeah, I was like, seriously, I'm like, what the fuck? That's why it took me so long to get into Argento. Because I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid. Like, I would rather watch these people get their pictures taken and then get slashed up.
Well, what's funny is with Blood and Black Lace, I think it wasn't a hit other than to other filmmakers. I don't think Bava made a lot of money. He made films cheaply, but I think the influence to his fellow filmmakers is way, way higher than any box office that film made. But, I mean, everything from, like, what was it? I mentioned earlier, Too Beautiful to Die, to, on a much less good scale, fashion crimes. Like, they just kept doing the fashion model thing just because it was cheap to go to a fashion shoot and shoot a film there while there was already a fashion show going on.
And
I may not have had a point there.
Well, I mean, you don't need a point when you're just talking about a bunch of hot girls getting their pictures taken. It works out okay. And, like, I'm trying to think of, because I know there was some stuff in the 80s that was pretty shit that fell along. What are some 80s fashion house? Because, like, all those movies, like, even when we did, what was that fucking shit movie called? Profumo.
Mm.
Yeah. Like that one, it wasn't necessarily like a fashion house at all. It was more like a weird whorehouse that wasn't really a whorehouse. But like everyone had that like 80s like shoulder pads and fucking like looking tits up and the whole fucking thing, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know what it is about this genre, but the look of how everyone appears in it is so fucking important to me, more than any other genre known to man. But even in the 80s, when fashion was horrific and disgusting, there was still, like, you could still look at a chick with giant shoulder pads and go, wow, she's in a fucking badass outfit, probably. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's super important to me. That's like
Well,
one of the hands down things for me in this.
they are Italian movies, so you gotta figure that they probably just means like, okay, we need a costume designer. Throw a rock and hit an out of work fashion designer. We'll go with that. Because that's, I mean, like I said, Italy. I mean,
Yeah, because style is production value. You know, if you can
Yeah.
get them flashy clothes or a hideously ugly apartment or horrible wallpaper, you know, you can distract people from your mystery for a few seconds at a time.
Well, look at like Torso, for instance, compared to other movies where girls are in a school and shit's going on. Like
mhm.
every fucking girl in that movie was like immaculate, even when that chick was like running in the mud. You know, like everyone looked amazing. It's just, I don't know. I'm sure like 20 years from now, like my daughter's husband's going to be talking about how fucking amazing Scream 6 was or some fucking shit like that for the same fucking reason. But I don't know. I don't get it.
No, Preet. And I've heard you talk about Tenebrae quite a bit, and you know, it's sort of in that turn of the '80s, but it's also very muted as far as like the color palette goes. But it's so rich in style as well. I mean, you've cited Tenebrae as one of your favorites, if not the favorite, right?
Yeah, that was probably the first one I had ever seen, like hands
Yeah.
down. But like there was something weird about the early '80s though too, because Blade of the Ripper, or not Blade of the Ripper, but Blade in the Dark is very much muted like that too. Like there was some weird, and it like honestly could just be something as stupid as film stock, but I doubt it. But like there was like a period where every fucking movie that came out was so fucking drab, and I know Argento did it on purpose.
Right.
And he's like, I want an icy look for this movie. I want it cold as shit. And then everyone's like, oh, okay, well we're just gonna like kind of wash everything out with like earth tones. Let's run with it. And I don't get it. Like that was like a weird period for me.
I think it was lashing out at all the pastels and paisleys before they got their revenge with neon.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And then that's the funny thing too, because like in the '70s everything was so fucking loud, but Blood and Black Lace is so technicolored, fucking amazing, like radioactive, disgusting color. It's just like I could watch Blood and Black Lace like every day with the sound off, and just like walk by just to see what something's looking like, and I'd go ooh, and just sit down and just stare at it. Like it's just like fucking like weird eye candy. But going back to Richard's first thing here, now how would movies like Slaughter Hotel and like the other like Bloodsucker Leads the Dance and like oh but like these like weird like castle kind of weird jolly like that, what does that fall under?
Oh man, that's a good question. That could be like the like a remote location, kind of let's trap these people in this place and then off them. I mean, when you talk about a stone cold classic like Bloodsucker Leads the Dance, you know, you're changing the game and shit. You know? No, that's
Oh.
because yeah, those have that common. Let's isolate people.
But they also feel like they're like trying to just like kind of be more like the '60s Bava horror movies than actual Jali. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they had those Gothic castles that were still standing and still lying around, so and they were probably relatively cheap to rent for making a film. So it might have been out of necessity. Plus, they look cool as shit. You just you really fried my brain by even mentioning that movie. You could.
Now, real quick, since you are aware of it, do you know if the porn scenes were like inserted in like how they did with like Thriller, or was that something that was shot like that?
Oh, that movie?
Yeah.
I think that some of the actresses in the film were indeed the same actresses that were in the porn sequences. And so it wasn't one of those cases where a French distributor, I'm looking at you, Jess Franco, where a French distributor would just take any old porn scenes.
I feel like I'm yelling and it's Sunday and I'm outside. Sorry, I'm like yelling about porn. Okay, go.
I got something to say. Here's wilderness. No, I feel like in the case of that film, it was filmed originally in two versions. Like from the get-go, it was going to be a porno. So, I'm glad I haven't seen it. Other than the trailer on IMDb for Bloodsucker Leads the Dance was the trailer for the porn version. That was.
It's worth a watch, dude. It's fun. I keep wanting to do it on the show, and Chris for some reason doesn't seem interested.
Well, once you've done Sister Ursula, it's all up the downhill from there.
Oh.
There is a giallo porno that I can't remember what I can't remember what the title of it was, but it was a triple X giallo from the late '80s. But I've never seen it.
Liar.
You got me.
Well, I just wanted to kind of wrap things up a little bit here. And just say thank you guys so much for being a part of this. This was fun as shit, and I really want to do this more often. And if anyone listening to the audio or watching live or whatever has a topic, like a broad topic that you would like to talk about, or you want to even be one of the people talking on this little get-together here, just go ahead and email me at ciaochiownetwork@gmail.com and let me know all about that. And we will be doing this again at the end of next month. So thank you guys so much for coming on. That was awesome.
Thank you for having us, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Glad to be here.
Now that I know that everyone's going to run off and go watch Bloodsucker Leads the Dance, I'm pretty happy.
I'm going to go back to pretending I don't know what that porno one is.
All right, guys. Well, until next time, everybody, ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Yay.